My name is Melena Gross. I teach here at Midway Elementary. I'm a grade 2-3 teacher.
So you know what you can do? You need to get some gloves and dig a little hole and put this plant back in because it needs to grow.
Use our different senses to describe the world that's around us. My name is Matt Gale. I currently teach a grade 5 class at Glenmary Elementary School in Trail, British Columbia.
We already have something. We already have something.
My name is Cheryl McKee, and I teach kindergarten and grade 1, a combined class at Redfish Elementary.
When we found out that we'd both be teaching grade 7, we decided that it was a great opportunity to collaborate and actually work on changing something in our practice that we saw was a real problem, which is that kids weren't making connections between math and the real world.
If all of us in the early grades in elementary school, if we're pre-teaching how to do inquiry-based learning, project-based learning, then I have a kind of utopia of, you know, you get to these kids in middle school and high school and you can just take off with them. You say, we're going to do an inquiry project, and you just go get them to that point where later on it's all about that deeper learning.
Okay, boys and girls, I'm here listening. My class gardens at the community garden here in Midway. We travel to the garden by our bikes. The community loves seeing us ride our bikes. I know we get a lot of smiles because I've been told that it looks like Mama Duck with all her ducklings following her to the garden. I went to the garden originally 3 years ago to teach children about the life cycles of plants. And it has developed into so many things beyond that. Obviously, a strong connection around the personal competencies. How are my kids functioning in the world? How do they feel about their connection to the environment, their relationship with each other? How are they able to regulate their emotions?
We have some basil to plant. I'm just sent Tara to the shed. We're going to do some companion planting with our...
It goes so many ways. I find when I'm there, I go with a purpose as an educator. I have a plan, I have a vision, I want to teach this concept, and all of a sudden, we have a rainstorm.
Very exciting to be in a thunderstorm in the tent.
A thunderstorm. And next thing you know, we're talking about the water cycle. And we're talking about flooding, and we're talking about erosion. So when we're in that environment, you never know what nature's going to bring us. And we try to have those aha moments as much as we can. And the only thing that I can do is prepare myself with my background knowledge and hope that somebody else in the group is going to have some things to add. And if we don't have the answers, we can come back here and learn more at the school setting.
Really lucky on our bike ride back to the
We're getting to
school.
see a rainbow!
We might get to see it. And that would just be a wonderful end to today.
Whoa!
Today was about the celebration of learning. We've been doing a multi-week inquiry-based learning with my class throughout the Columbia Basin in aims to expose a lot of students to a number of ecosystems and how that's connected to the larger basin, the Columbia River, but also to integrate some First Nations perspectives in science, as noted in the new curriculum within British Columbia, and how the students can take those perspectives, blend them with contemporary science perspectives, and showcase some learning of some local plant species here at Champion Lakes.
So this is an example of Devil's Club.
The project itself, I have to say, came out of a single word, and the word is Tamikswa. And Tamikswa means the many coming from one. It translates best probably as biodiversity, but it also translates as land and interconnectedness. That was one of the main learning goals, was to share Indigenous science and just how that interrelates with where ecology has now moved. We've learned we can't isolate things in the natural world, and so interconnectedness is a very solid Indigenous foundational teaching from millennia of observation and sharing knowledge.
One example is a student, we stood in two different places along the Columbia River earlier within the project, and the student had this moment where he realized that rivers actually flow, that when he crosses the bridge and trail and standing where he was, that's the same river and they're connected. And for him, knowing that that's an important place, experiencing the industry that needs to rely on the Columbia River and within the larger basin, the kids are starting to understand geography in a whole different sense and make those connections. As well as how it impacts themselves and their community.
Now where the students are having to teach their peers about something they've learned about. So not only are they having to think about, not only are they having to be responsible for their learning, but they're also having to think about how they're going to teach others. I think co-creating criteria with the students, not at the beginning of the project, but about halfway through when they fully understand all the nuances of a project, is a really rich way to actually create really powerful responses from students to that criteria. So it takes some time, but when they fully understand, for example, for this project, what is an effective presentation, what is a good question, what is good information to share, what is an effective way to share that information with their peers, what does that look like, and they actually develop the rubric for that, it means that everyone has a really clear understanding, so it actually contributes to students providing richer results.
That kids weren't making connections between math and the real world. That math was something that you did when you were in school, and that was it. And they didn't see how it related to their real lives, and they didn't see how it would relate to their future, to the careers they might have. So we decided to take the opportunity to work together to try to change that.
And I liked the way I was doing math before, but it wasn't quite complete. And this way, when we focus on the 4 quadrants of learning, in fact, we don't think it's only applicable to math, we use it in other subjects as well, it just made sense. And when the kids study a math question or a math problem, by the time they've completed 4 quadrants of thinking about the concept, they're pretty good with that. That's what I like about it.
Mm-hmm. Nice. And if they're struggling, they have the opportunity to approach it from a variety of different angles. So if they are working concretely at that point, then they're working more from the diagrams and models and taking that and putting it into the numbers. And if there's someone that really works quite abstractly and in the realm of the mind, they're being required to put it into a real life situation and to represent it in a way that they can communicate it to other people. So it's challenging and supporting all of the learners, whether math comes really easily to them or if it's a challenge.
And what I've noticed just being involved in the process in my practicum is that the kids have a choice of difficulty in the question. So we've actually seen a lot of kids choose a question that they're actually struggling with the concept on so they can work further on it. They get a choice and it just works well for them.
So one of the reasons that we decided to go out in the community was to support the social lives of the students, but also really to be connecting to our community and to be connecting it to careers, which is a large part of grade 7, that they need to start thinking about where they're going, and then if they do that before it becomes immediate and threatening and challenging like it is in grade 12, that they'll be able to really explore things that are going on. So our reason for getting out in the community is really about that.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's also getting them moving in the morning, which they love. So the Wonder Walk has evolved a lot since the beginning of the year. But what we're finding works really well right now is if we get a pretty good grasp on our topic. So we put a copy on the board of the worksheet that we go from the 4 quadrants, and then we just touch on it, and we touch on the major concepts in the lesson. We start filling it in a little bit with an example question or potential questions that we might run into, knowing where we're going. Yeah, and linking it to a career or a role. Today it was risk takers, which isn't a career, but it's what we all do all the time and we really encourage. That helped a lot to just set the kids' minds going in the right direction. So anything that will focus them toward the concept we're looking for.
Oh, for circles, we've been to the tire stores. So looking at radiuses and diameters and everything. We've been to the grocery stores a number of times, looking at prices and ratios and all of those things. That's been a really rich location. We've gone to the preschool to talk about a variety of things with that, down to the beach, because where we are here, the water level is dam controlled, so it goes up and down. So when we're talking about integers, that was a good location.
it mimics real life and the way we learn in real life because we've connected it so much to real life. And so yeah, the kids are all working and they're all feeling like they're winning. I mean, they get stuck and they keep going. You know, it's different than a textbook feeling.
Our class, the K1 class, has spent so much time out here in this territory that we started to name the territory. So we're right now in the gathering place that the children have named.
Can anyone 100% identify it? You can?
I think it's those white berries that you step on and they pop.
Okay, yes, that's exactly right. So this is snowberry.
I started small and there'd be times where I was overwhelmed with it and I started very structured. And as I've got more comfortable outside and as I have got to know the area where we spend our time in, the territory, and my safety in it, I have felt more comfortable and my structure has been able to be more open and I just see such great development and excitement with the children too. More than just what the place is right now. It's what was here before, who has used this place before as in terms of people, but also in terms of the more than human. What animals and that do we share this area with? And going back to that loving of nature. And how do we connect it all? How do we start to weave all of those teachings together and see how math is everywhere, how science is everywhere, how everything is connected.
The project in the third term started with water as an idea. So we started exploring from a science point of view properties of water, what water does. All year we've had a very specific outdoor classroom time where we climb up the mountain to our special place on Anderson Creek. And Anderson Creek is about 10 minutes walk behind our school, so we can access it as often as we like. We decided we would go up and put boats in the water, so they constructed boats and they figured out how water flows, the whole idea of downstream, and then that led them to question, where is this water going? And from that we decided to go to a higher elevation next, and so we climbed up to Gyro and looked out over the city to imagine where different creeks and where, because the kids also know about Cottonwood Creek, which is another main creek that enters our lake. And so we started talking about all the creeks leading into the lake. So we started looking at how the land was used. And even the children noticed how much of our waterfront was used for things that weren't necessarily community friendly. They were very specific to small groups of people. So the idea was that they went and looked at the land and started imagining what could be there on the waterfront, and how the project just evolved from that. As a facilitator, instead of me knowing, okay, next week we're going to do this, so that language changes as a teacher, because you're not exactly sure where you're going next week, right? Like the field trip to follow the water, that one just came because of where does this come out? And so we had to answer that question. So we left the school at 9 o'clock and off we went, right? And in that sense, it wasn't planned out.
The waterfront land as it's about having a lot of other campgrounds in Nelson and not far away. Green one is just a lunch place. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So if it's like raining, you go there.
Yeah.
Lunch.
Oh, and this is our.
I said something about mermaids too. You got some of those lined up.
Yeah.
And then you take that and you build a house out of it. And how many houses do you think you could get in there?
Probably 9.
About 9.
This model.
There's amazing things. I think we don't give kids enough credit for what they are actually able to do and accomplish. I think that was a big surprise for this project. They're 7, and their understanding and knowledge today, listening to them talk about their projects, was really exciting. And also great relief. It's like, okay, there was a lot of big ideas that they had a pretty good grasp on for 7-year-olds.
The real world learning happens everywhere. It doesn't happen just in a classroom, in four walls, indoors. My strongest memories as a learner going to school are the ones where I wasn't at school. I was visiting a site, I was listening to a local storyteller, I was on the water paddling. Those are the memories that stand out to me, and I think it's because it was connected more to real world. It wasn't an idea in a textbook. Initially, the students kind of wonder, like, what does this have to do with grade 7 curriculum or grade 6 curriculum? But eventually they start to see that it's about leaning in and listening. It's about speaking powerfully. It's about making connections and being a strong communicator. It's about thinking critically and figuring out how to solve a problem. Place-based or community-based education is where you are taking your students to a place or into the community and doing your learning there. Place-based education can happen in your schoolyard, right outside your classroom door, in a specific place with a specific purpose. It can happen in any part of your community. And it brings kids into parts of the community they might not have ever connected with before. So it makes them feel more a part of where they live, and like what they're doing maybe matters, and that they're valued. And to me as a teacher, it's nothing more important than teaching kids how valuable they are. They're our greatest asset.
Place-conscious learning and being outside, they're together. They can't be taken apart. To do the new curriculum, you need to be going outside. You need to be taking the kids outside and touching and in it and talking about it and making connections.